program with artifacts on display at the Southern Ohio Museum on Gallia Street in Portsmouth. That's June 12th, the Thursday. Then, however,
What time?
at well, whatever time it says on here,
you're giving
y'all have something
You want me to
to.
pass this out?
Yeah, thank you. Except I gotta save one or I can't make my announcement. There we go. Thank you. There's way plenty. Anyway, then on Flag Day, June 14th. Speaking of our Jackson Vinton County friends, there's going to be Archaeology Day, hands-on artifacts, people to talk to, good fellowship at the public library just north of downtown MacArthur. That'll be on that Saturday afternoon. Then, summer solstice. In fact, this one is very important to the group here, because summer solstice at Friends of Serpent Mound, June 20th to 22nd, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There will be programs and exhibits, and as many of you likely know, this year they're featuring our late president, the John M. Barnhart Memorial Archaeology Education Tent, and they've named it after our late President Barney, who, as I'm sure most of us know, sadly, in fact, died at that event last year. And and people are invited to bring their collections. It's a great big tent, and to bring them in honor of. And then one more, Mr. Arger, right? Okay, there is Mr. Harold. Mr. Harold here will be exhibiting his collection at the Pickaway County Historical Society's historic farm, Mount Oval, on Route 23, just north of the Ross County line. And it's going to be a whole old-time agricultural day with old farm equipment, good food, all kinds of old-time agricultural demonstrations, things like that. Visitors Forever is setting up, and again, Harold, our own Harold, and others will be bringing their artifacts. So folks are invited to all. Thank you, and I yield the floor back. Thank you.
And then we have Brett Ruby back here, who is going to tell us about an event that's coming up.
I can do that, Gary.
Pardon? Oh, you're going to? Okay, that's fine.
I won't take long. I just wanted to say hello and welcome to all of you tonight to Hopewell Culture National Historical Park. I will have the visitor center open with the bookstore, and we do have a few new products out there, so before you rush out this evening, take a look, and if you would like to purchase, we'll have that open. And don't forget too, those of you that are planning vacations, going around visiting parks, this is a place where you can get your access pass and your military lifetime pass here. If you're a veteran, you know someone that is, we've got those here. If you know a fourth grader, this is a place where they can get their fourth grade pass, and they can take their family to all the national parks for free for their fourth grade year. So I also want to point out the art. We have a new exhibit up. It's here until June 22nd. 20 different schools from across the United States worked with our theme, River Connections, and they worked on beautiful art related to their area. Some are from New Jersey, some are from California. We have a couple from Ohio. They, about half of them reached out to the park and did a distance learning program with our park rangers from wherever their school was, and they learned about the Hopewell and then created art. So we'll have this up through June 22nd. We have some other things planned for the summer too, including June 11th, which is Wednesday. Dr. Ruby will be leading another tour for you all at Hopewell Earthworks so that you can view the lumistice and the solstice on the same evening. Another night where you can see a once in an 18-year event. This won't happen again for another 18 years. You can see the sunset on one side of the Hopeton Gateway, and then walk to the other side and watch the moon rise up through another gateway on the opposite side. And it's magical. It's really spiritual, beautiful thing to see. If the weather behaves. It worked out super for us last year, possibly the hottest, most miserable day on earth. And then the sky opened up and it was just perfect. And it's really a fun thing to do. So there is an opportunity for that. You'll start seeing tomorrow advertisements to the public for that, and you can sign up with our friends. The Friends of Hopewell Culture is helping us with this again. Gary, Rita, thank you both for the work that you all do. The Friends of Hopewell Culture is an awesome opportunity if you want to stay engaged with us. Reach out to them to learn how you can help us with that. We've been relying on them a lot lately, and we appreciate it very much. So I'm not going to say any more. I'm going to turn it over to Gary to introduce the speaker, and you'll have a good night. Thank you.
And on the theme of Friends of Hopewell Culture, if you are a member, just a reminder that tomorrow night there is an event at Tipler's. It's a trivia night, and it starts at 6:30?
Yeah.
6:30. And if you are not a member, see Rita or I anytime, and we'll help you hook up with the powers that be and get you enrolled, and so that you're on a mailing list of events. And we've got a bus trip planned, some other things in the offing. We try to plan 3 or 4 months in advance, and so we've got some things done, ready to be made public. So check in with us, please.
Just want to clarify, if you're not a member, come down anyway to Tipler's. That's open to the public.
Yeah, and it's a good way to get to meet some of the people that are too. So.
And the trivia contest topic is national parks.
Okay. National parks.
Where's Tipler's? What is Tipler's?
It's a new wine bar
Yes,
downtown somewhere.
A new wine tasting bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, now switching gears. So it's my pleasure to introduce Greg Sandor to you folks. We don't go way back, but we're learning a lot about each other. He has been over to my basement and looked at the harness collection. He has an interest in frontier life. His ancestors came over to Ross County very early after the American Revolution. They had some land here, correct?
Yeah.
And
1797.
1797. And his main claim to fame is that he currently is an artist. Not that he hasn't been for a long time, but he is taking his artistic talents in a way that I think you're all going to find intriguing. He's very interested in the earthworks and the Hopewell peoples, and he wants to help us envision what it was like back then. Is that
That's exactly right. Yeah.
all right? And so he's free to tell us anything he wants to besides that, but Greg Sandor.
I'll say it right off the bat, I'm mainly here to learn from y'all. I think I can talk for about 10 minutes about what I've been up to for the past year or so. But really what I'd like to do is mine your minds. I've learned a lot over the past year or so when I've really been paying attention to this stuff. But mostly what I've learned is that I don't know anything. Or the more I learn, the less I think I know. So I think I've learned what I don't know and how much there is that I don't know. So I hope we can have a discussion.
That's the science of
Welcome to the
archaeology.
club.
Yeah, you're right. So
The more we know, the more questions we have.
Yeah. So
Right?
I hope you will interrupt me with lots of questions and we'll keep this interesting. So I'm Greg Sandor. I'm an artist. I studied anthropology at Ohio State like 30 years ago. I'm interested in it, but I haven't worked as an archaeologist. But, I don't know, I guess I'll just get into where it was. About a year ago, I don't even really, at the moment, I don't remember what got me going on this, but I started making I think that I heard something about the World Heritage sites, and I've always been interested in the mounds and the earthworks. And, you know, when I was in the 4th grade, I think we went to Flint Ridge and went to the Historical Society, and so it's always been, you know, of course we live near the mounds and earthworks. So it's always been kind of in my world, but I didn't know a whole lot about it. So I took the 8 heritage sites, the Squier and Davis maps, and I cleaned them up digitally and then printed them out. Went to work on them with watercolors. Just I got an affinity for old hand-colored maps, and I just thought they'd be pretty and maybe I could make them a little easier to read. So I cleaned them up and I painted 9,000 little dots. Tried to outline the mounds and make them a little more attractive. So my main goal is to figure out what it looked like. The more I worked on these, the more I was looking at them flat. But I'm trying to imagine how people are moving around in here. It's, spending weeks and months painting these things and just really start to you see gateways and you see mounds and you see how the rivers are related to the earthworks. The more I was coloring, the more I was trying to imagine what it's like on the ground. Several years ago, I took a bunch of Aztec, on the far right, that image, this cutout from one of the Aztec codices back in the 1500s. When the Spanish were in Mexico, they had native artists explain to us your culture. What is all this stuff that's that we're losing now, or you're about to lose. So anyway, so I took those and used them as references, and I built a bunch of Aztec clothing and temples and landscapes and things. And so I think I'm tending to, or sort of trying to do something similar with the Hopewell, because about the time I started working on those maps, I started getting interested in I just want to do some like modern landscape painting here in Chillicothe. We live out on Charleston Pike, and it's pretty. I just wanted to paint that stuff. But as I was working on this, the idea came to me that I can combine that with some of the digital stuff I do. I know that the sun and the moon haven't changed much in 2,000 years. The moon's like 170 feet further away than it was, but that's about the only difference. So I'll briefly go through. I built a digital model of our environment. We want the landscape and the far hills, and I want the earthworks in it, and then I want to imagine myself in that landscape and try to populate it, which is really what I'd like to talk to you all about. I've seen this guy's work. So this is a digital elevation model. The black is the low point, white is the high point. So this is the Mound City area. We're right here. The Shire Circle down there and opens up here. So I took elevation models for the sites and using all kinds of different records. I drew earthworks and mounds, trying to keep them scaled in breadth and height, and try to really approximate what they were. And then overlaid one of the programs I used. I take this elevation model, I overlay that on it and extrude the earthworks up so I can have an unbothered landscape with those other features. Then I take, this is modern aerial photograph, so here we are, right there. And I set to work with some tools and I erased all the modern features and tried to replace with what I imagined roughly it would look like. So I drew in some more streams, for example, and I figured there's foliage growing along them. And, I've got my works. It's hard to see on this one, so I've got it illustrated over there a little better. Once I get all the modern stuff taken out, then I can start taking, like I have solstice, just throwing lines down to see, checking for alignments and with the sun and the moon, which I didn't really know a lot about when I started, and I still don't, but it's a way for me to test, like, well, can you really see through this gateway, or from one mountain to another? What happens when the sun and moon are rising? So anyway, so I take the elevation models. I had to erase all the highway overpasses, and you can see building footprints. The resolution of that, this is a modified map, by the way, just so you can see it a little better. It's very dark in reality. But, Yeah, so by erasing all of the modern features and trying to reconstruct, where road cuts have been made, what I want is just a reference for me to paint without the modern stuff. So took those out, and then we get something like this. So we've got the terrain, and that's the real hills and the real river, roughly. The overlaid earthworks, and then I try to imagine where paths would be, based on, you've got maybe I don't know, you have an approach to the site. So these are all just made up, the pathways. Then when I put the aerial photograph on top of that, I get an approximation of what it might look like, a little closer with some color. Here's Hope, of course. One of the things I want to do for my paintings is, I really like bird's eye views. I like seeing the overall layout of the works, but they never would have seen them that way. So with all the sites, I've been trying to find places on the ground where someone conceivably could have stood. If I traveled back in time 2,000 years, I could stand on this hill and get a view like this. Because we know what, the sunrise here is really pretty, and it's just as beautiful then. The hills were shaped roughly the same. So I want to so I'm trying to combine the real landscape and the real feeling of being here with filling in, like, okay, and now there's, the earthworks and the river beyond it, and people moving around.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you, in your mind, go back 4 slides or whatever to your original view, yeah, that was it. Yeah. So over on the modern, is that like a Google Earth map, or what are you working?
This is USGS, nationalmap.gov. You can get, this is, I think this is about 1 meter per pixel resolution.
And then do you do you capture a screenshot? Is that what you're doing?
No, you can no.
Okay.
I wish I could. There used to be a site called seamless.usgs.gov, which was wonderful. Like 20 years ago, you could pick an area of interest, draw a square or a rectangle around it, and you just get the data you want. And it would, it would give you a menu. So I want the elevation models, and I want, here's all the aerial photography, so you can select, whatever satellite imagery you want or aerial stuff. And it would just give you that tile. Now, like several years ago, they changed it, so now you have to download tiles. So my map, and I've got a slide later where I can show this a little better, but now you have to get, big, like, degree tiles, so it's miles and miles and miles of stuff that they don't need. So, in this way, while I'm thinking about it, one of the things I did when I built the model, so I started with really fairly low resolution stuff. 1/3 arcsecond, which is like 30 meters per pixel. So from here to the front door, there's a measurement here, then there's a measurement out at the front door of this building, and then there's a measurement out at the picnic table. It's fairly low resolution, but it's fine for far mountains and hills, and they get the general shape of the rivers and stuff. But then on the actual locations, I got higher resolution data. It's about 1/9 arcsecond, which is like 10 feet. So, we have 3 measurements in this room alone. So you get a little bit more accurate up close. Another great site, by the way, if you're looking for aerial stuff, OGRIP, Ohio Geographic Information Portal, I think.
OGRIP.
Yeah, it's OGRIP. They have great data, LiDAR, really high resolution terrain data if you want it. And I think it's 1 foot resolution aerial photography. And I chose not to use, I got that for all of my sites, and then I discovered I didn't like the color and a couple other things, so I switched to the higher or the lower resolution, but more natural color data. Okay, so
Ohio Department of Transportation.
So I put the OGRIP, OGRIP.
Yeah. But you can get it through.
It's like
through-
OGRIP.gov
Yeah.
or something like that. But just search Ohio.
OGRIP, that's what you
Yeah.
need to search on.
And you can, it has an interactive map, and you can just, move your cursor around on it to find the location you want. You type in an area, and, you can go to wherever you like, and it'll give you a menu of choices you can have. They have aerial photography, they have terrain data, hydrography, and, different, a lot of different layers of information depending on what you're looking for. Okay, so built a terrain model. I've got my terrain, I've got my imagery on top, and then, as you see, I can add trees and stuff like that. We'll talk about that in a moment. Once that's done, then I can move my camera around anywhere I want. So I can get down 1.5 meters off the ground, and I can set my field of view to something approximating human field of view, and I can go to locations. I can also set where the sun and moon are. And so these are Aztecs, by the way. This is leftover stuff in my files. I have needed some human figures, and I'm not really sure what the Hopewell looked like, so hence here I am. What did they look like? But for now, I wanted people.
2 arms, 2 legs.
Yeah, right. That's a good start. They had ear spools. So they
And
had
the heart's in their chest.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so here's a view from Hopeton. That's winter solstice sunset. I hope this is right. I haven't double checked a lot of this stuff, so I'm hoping I get these views right. And then from an image like this, and this is a study I'm working on, I can take it into the studio and start slinging paint. I was talking to someone recently who suggested there might be an interesting alignment through this circle at North Fork. This is just that way, right? Okay, so just down the valley, a few miles. So one of the things I like about this model is I can test stuff like that. And I can also use that, if I know that that information's right, and my model doesn't line up, as in this case, you'll see, then I think maybe, well, okay, I need to make some adjustments in my model, maybe my locations are a little off. I think, I'll say, I've read on maps, this is not for navigation and not for life-saving purposes. I'm not gonna I'll make a kind of disclaimer in that jokingly. Don't use this for navigation, but you should be able to get pretty close to where you want to be with this map. It's all geographically registered, should be pretty accurate. So, okay, so
Or you can take a road.
somebody suggested that there might be an interesting alignment through the gateways in this circle, if I understood it right. So this is just a chart I made to able to get the information. So really great tool if you're looking to do any of this kind of stuff. Get the latitude and longitude, and for that you can just go to Google Maps, find location, click on it, and it'll give you the lat long. Take that and go to USNO Sun Moon Calculator. And they have several of them. They actually have a big menu of applications in calculus. But the one I like is the altitude and azimuth of the sun. So I give it the latitude, longitude, a date, and like how many data points do I want. So in this case, I go, I want to know every 5 minutes where the sun is. So I get that, get my information, and then run down until I find, okay, the sun's about a degree off the horizon, it's roughly sunrise. And it'll give me the elevation above or below the horizon, and then the azimuth, the direction. In this case, so then I took that, rotated a line and dropped it on here and moved it around. This comes up close, but it's not really tightly aligned. Take it into another program, and this is, we'll talk a little about this if you're interested. This is a program called TerraGen. I've been using it for, I don't know, 25 years or so. There's a free version available that you can test it out if you want to. I think restrictions are something like render size, and some of the tools aren't available, but it's pretty useful because you can, it's really good for manipulating and rendering terrain. So anyway, so this is what happened when I put the sunrise, I think that's a sunrise, maybe sunset. Sunset right here, across this. So this makes me think, well, one of two things, or one of three things is happening. Either my model is wrong, maybe I need to rotate this and I can check that. I might not have drawn this part as carefully, or I didn't have good information when I was building the model, or there isn't an alignment, or there are other possibilities, I guess. Those are the two that spring to mind. So my model might be off. So when I get some time, I'll go back and I'll check and see if I can get that to rotate. This line is a lunar line in the other direction. And I was trying to find something interesting there. I haven't done it yet.
I'm trying to get everybody, he wants our comments, folks.
Yeah, please interrupt.
So I'm filling in for everybody else, it looks
I
like.
appreciate it.
But it seems to me, Brett, that when we were out at Hopeton last year for the solstice and sunset, or sunset and rise, whatever it was, that they didn't line up exactly into those gates, am I correct? One of those caught the corner of the gate, much like the yellow line is there. So I don't know how much you need to tweak, is what I guess.
So this might not be wrong. It may be just that's how it was built.
I remember them not lining up exactly.
Okay. In a case like this, especially just a quick word about this wood hinge. I found, I think it was Brett's data, I found it in your paper before we had met. There's a little inset in some paper I found online. It's one of the hazards of doing it this way. I don't have access to a lot of data, so this is all like open source stuff I can find on the internet. And, I was looking for my notes from class from 30 years ago, and just wherever I can get information. But I did find, I think, the magnetometer survey of where those post holes were. So I put them down in a 3D modeling program and built them to scale, the ones that were existing. And then to fill in the circle, I just mirrored them and filled in the missing ones approximately spaced the same. But I marked what the original ones are. I think they're all like that. So most of them are on the upper side there. If they're accurate, it may be something like, maybe it's not supposed to go through the gateway at this event. Maybe the gateway is for something else, but maybe those posts are, maybe they painted the important ones red, or something like that, where they marked them out in some special way. I mean, it's a kind of sort of a sundial. I don't know how they're used. But anyway, so that's one of the ways to use it. Down here, this is all just a quick aside. This is all mechanical stuff that makes this work. So I have my terrains stacked up with the ortho imagery on it, and then I can also distribute trees and plants and things like that. So this was. Oh, and I made a note on here just so I wouldn't forget. But so this is that same alignment and everything. It's just a different angle looking at it. I did see that the sunset doesn't seem to work. Not exactly. Except you say maybe it's not supposed to. Maybe it's.
And I was talking about Hopeton and you're
But-
talking about Hopewell. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So at North Fork, though, the sunrise is right along that long straight earthwork above the effigy mound. I mean, it's within a degree or so, and this was just like I said earlier, when I look at that sun-moon chart from the Naval Observatory, I just pick one that's close and it's going to get the sun above the horizon, above the mountain, or so I don't know exactly where they set their alignment, but without double checking that information, the first one I got gave me this result. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And just one real quick thing here that also occurred to me. The shadows I thought were kind of neat. It's like these mounds here, it's like a constellation, but the shadows kind of, of the mountains seem to follow those. So I don't know if there's are they using shadows? Are they using hills and sundials? But I don't know, and it's just something that I thought about while I was digging through this stuff. So anyway, so I rendered that image, and so this is where the initial image was, just standing on the ground and looking through. So there's the gateway, and then the 4 posts, and I've got posts here. I think maybe they weren't posts now, but and then the other gateways, roughly over there.
Are we at Hopewell or Hopeton there? I'm sorry.
That's North Fork. That's
North Fork.
Hopewell Culture
Hopeton.
National
Hopewell.
Historic Park.
That's Hopewell.
Hopewell Mound Group.
Big pardon?
Hopewell Mound Group.
Hopewell Mound. Okay. So I started out with Squier and Davis, and so after 4 months of painting 9,000 little dots, it's North Fork forever for me. When I started looking it up, I'm always stuck on that. That's neat.
Uh-huh.
So this is just a couple of tests I did just for fun. For years, I mean, a long time ago, I heard about the idea of the Great Hopewell Road, and so I wanted to test that. So this whole image is my map. This isn't pieces assembled for this picture. This is a render of the entire map. So this is all 30-meter data from Port Ancient to Chillicothe up to Newark. So these are all in their proper position, all geographically referenced, and this set of parallels that come out of the aqueduct are, I think, I was watching a lecture on YouTube, and I think he said they ran for like 16 miles, that they could tell, and then I guess the surveyors just gave up and went to have lunch or something, but they went at least 16 miles out of town. So this is a straight line model that I laid down, and it intersects into Hopeton, like right there. I don't know if there's a road, I don't know if it was just, walk out of town, follow this path, and by the time you've gone 5 or 6 miles, we can stay on a straight line for another 50 miles and get there. I don't know if that means anything, but it's kind of neat that it lines up. And then I ran one out of Hopeton here, and this is site, and it just, so I don't know if you want to check up here, maybe there's a welcome center or some kind of a village or something out there. Anyways, it's kind of a good way to test stuff pretty rapidly once it's built. So each one's about 4.5 kilometers wide. But these are all the locations of the map. This is another one. Somebody else asked about a cross-border sunrise at Newark, and this is what I came up with, and it's dead on. It's like 67.5 degrees, and it's.
Can you
right
explain
there.
what the cross quarter is? What's cross quarter? Is that
Cross-border
halfway
is-
between,
It's between the solstice and the equinox.
Yeah.
Right?
midway?
Midway.
Yeah.
So roughly the midpoint, and it's not a precise date, I think, it's.
Right.
There's a bit of space, but, so we're at the equinox in, the middle of March, end of March, and then June 21st or so is the solstice, so between those, that point. So evidently it was important to keep track of that fine a division of time.
I think those cross quarters coincide with some modern festivities like Groundhog Day and Halloween. And they
Oh,
actually,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So at its Snake Den, the 3 mounds and the Squircle, if you drew a straight line through the center, wherever the heck that is, because the mounds have been, kind of damaged. I mean, it comes pretty close to the cross quarter for the sun, the alignment of those 4 earthworks. Whether it is, I don't know. But like you said, there's no exact date that,
Yeah, it's kind of fuzzy. When
Yeah.
I first started learning about this stuff, I was thinking that, it's just this date, but even
Right.
the lunar, the precession
Cross-quarter?
is,
Which one?
there's a
No, I don't
kind of
know.
a period of time where it's
between the summer solstice and the winter solstice.
Halloween.
Yeah. Halloween's one, Groundhog Day is one. Yeah.
I think, is it August 2, like August 7th, I think. Is there anything around August? We don't do anything in August. It is like Halloween. Easter.
It's Halloween.
So, just for fun, here are a couple of other rendered sites and North Fork without all my scribbling on it. And got a high bank. This one was kind of fun because if you look at the even the Squier and Davis one, this is all cut off, I think. It's cut off somewhere around here with the bank. It's like they rebuilt. It's one of the nice things about some of the terrain programs. If you're interested in terrain modeling, another useful program is called Leveler. And it's good for sculpting terrain. So if you need to eradicate highway overpasses or restore banks that have been washed away, you can clone and elevate or depress terrain. I think I'm missing a slide. I am. So I'll just tell you, let's get down here. Yeah, okay, well, the slide that I somehow have omitted, one of the things you can do is you can apply what are called shaders, which is just a little bit of instruction to the computer to tell it what surfaces are supposed to look like. So I drew the rivers and made a mask and then told the program to make this shiny and wavy, a little translucent, and you can get very detailed. These are coarse models because for what I want for my references for paintings, I don't need terrific ground detail, but you can get down to the level of pebbles and tree bark, and with effort, you can make photographic quality renders. So this is just an overlay of the fourth photo with Squier and Davis, and they line up pretty well. But I used them, and I really, at first, and then I started finding that they're not quite aligning with some of the other aerial photographs where you can see bits of it and some of the other data and stuff. So it's an amalgamation. My earthworks are the best, I'd say the best quality I can get using everything that I have. And so I've got some modern stuff, and I forget the name of the organization, but there's a pretty good site with some really nice digitized outlines of Newark and some of the other sites. The World Heritage, the National Park Service had good maps. And, so I've kind of put together all the best stuff that I had that would fit and kind of Frankenstein it all together. Hope it looks consistent. Yeah.
I have a quick question. This has come up before and there's been some disagreements. As far as the vegetation, deciduous forest cover, prairie land, what would you have expected in these areas?
Well, I assumed, at first at least, that it was kind of like it is today. Open, flat grasslands. If you go up to High Bank Metro Park in Columbus, and I think they're actually doing that. We walked one a few years ago before I was even thinking about this stuff here, where it's kind of natural prairie. It might have been, I don't know, was it North Fork? Where did we go? Okay. All right, so 10 years ago, I walked one, and it was really cool, and there was some grass there. So I don't know. And then I was watching a talk that Brad Lepper gave at Portsmouth here somewhere, where he was talking about they've been, they were looking at I think they'd made a cut into an earthwork, and they were looking at it, and he happened to be with like a soil geologist. He said, this looks like a prairie profile. And so I took that to...
The Great Circle in Newark.
Yeah, I think that was
Yeah.
the one that they were looking at. So for that purpose, I just assumed that it's kind of flat and open.
That was prairie. It was determined that the ground around
That's all
there
prairie.
was.
I think they found that at Liberty too.
Yeah.
Okay. And for the others, I don't know. And this is still
Yeah.
all kind of generic and loose, so. If you
But
got it-
back
if you have
then-
a chart showing where,
But back then, they could, if they burned, the prairie,
Right.
or, they manipulated the environment, because that's a question a lot of people ask is, well, they built these earthworks, and if there's alignments, well, how can you see it with all the trees there?
Right.
Or whatever, and, they didn't cut down all the trees, but they did, do things to their environment to,
Right, are they torching the field before everybody shows up?
right, yeah.
I noticed the grass out here is getting a little long on the mounds. Are we gonna go, just take set fire to them and burn it off?
There's good reason to believe that there, certainly in Ross County, that there were not natural prairies.
Yeah.
If there were open grasslands, they were there only because people made them. Anthropogenic grasslands did exist, but even if you look at a soils map of Newark, Ohio, or anywhere in Ross County, there are no prairie soils.
Right.
Prairie soils take, well,
Long
it's
time.
hard to know, but thousands of years to build a true prairie soil, and they just don't exist. And they're persistent. If they were there, they'd still be there.
Right.
And we don't see them. What we do find, like under the Great Circle, what Brad Lepper found was phytoliths from grasses. So he knows that there were grasses under that earthwork, but the full extent of those grasses is really unknown. But by far the weight of the evidence would say this was a deciduous forest unless people made a clearing in it. But we also know at Fort Ancient, there's pollen data. It's one of the few places that they have good pollen data because there are ponds that
Oh, so they
that
collected
people
them over the
built there
years.
2,000 years ago, and those are good environments to preserve pollen. Elsewhere in Ohio, we don't have a lot of natural lakes. Like in Ross County, there's only like one natural lake. Lake Ellensmere is the only natural lake. So there's no place you can sample to find this stuff. But there happens to be at Fort Ancient good data. And what they found there was a pollen record that would be consistent with an anthropogenic grassland of miles in extent. So it was through time, it tracks with the construction of those earthworks. There's tree pollen, and then there's a peak of grass pollen
As
in
they're
the
building
first
the
couple, 3
works.
centuries AD when they're building those earthworks. And it must have been, given the pollen data that they have, it must have been miles in extent. So people had modified that environment to a great extent. That's probably happening here too, but we just don't have any data to know that.
Yeah.
But, like I said, the bottom line is, it was probably deciduous forest, and people were making clearings in that forest, probably for 1,500 years before Hopewell. People are farming.
So when they came in, then there is already this open
I
ground.
think, actually not, I think it was patchy. Because those prairies would have to be maintained on almost an annual basis, certainly like a 5-year scale, they would have to be burning. And there's only so many people, and there's so much land that, I think it was a patchy landscape,
So less open than this?
way less open than that.
Okay.
I think it would be
So
mostly
forest
trees.
up to maybe some area around, roughly where the works are, and then everything else is, forest interspersed with, clearings here and there?
Yeah, and at this point, we're talking with what my prejudices and my speculations tell me. And my guess is there weren't enough people to keep very much of that ground clear. I think that and there's the other thing that we know is there's 25 earthworks of Mound City size and larger within 30 miles of here. And we know that from all the dates, all the ones that are dated, they're all in use at the same time. In the 1st and 2nd century, people are doing things at these earthworks.
You think they're migrating from one spot to the
So it's
other?
like a pilgrimage from one to another?
I don't think they're using them in any one year. I think they're probably only using a couple of earthworks in
Okay.
any one year, and they're probably going out and doing maintenance at that place, burning it off for a festival, and then they may not come back to that one for 10 years. I mean, they can't they can't clear 25 of them in the same year. There has to
But
be.
they spruce it up before, like today's,
Yeah.
this is the big year for
Yep.
Mound City.
And there's great models
So
of
they don't
that.
do
There's
this.
places in Ecuador where people are still doing this down in the Amazon basin. And that's exactly what happens, is they plan a festival, it's 5 years down the road, and people plan ahead and they spruce it up for that event, and then they go back and
Prehistoric
do what
Burning
they're
Man,
doing.
they all
They
show
have
up.
stages of maintenance. They
Yeah.
do certain things certain years.
Yeah.
To culminate.
And one of the things that you've noticed with these alignments is, some are summer solstice aligned, and some are winter solstice aligned, and that's probably tracking with, when they're using these places. And I can imagine, a round, a ceremonial round where at some point in the year, they're at Mound City, at another point in the year, they may be at Hopewell Mound Group. They may not make it to site for 10 years. And some of these places, I'm talking way too much, but some of these places,
No, this is perfect.
it may have been, the building of the thing was the important thing, and they may never have gone back and used it.
So
The
this-
building may be the use.
Okay.
And
The act of building it is their,
that was the
Offering.
festival, that was the event, that was the important thing, and they may have walked away. Some places like High Bank, I've walked that place when it's been plowed, year after year, I've walked that ground when it was well plowed back in the day, and I've never found an artifact there.
That's like at a lot of earthwork sites, like when Jared and I have been out on some of these earthwork sites and the ground's plowed. I mean, we can walk for 3 days and you might find, a few pieces of what you think's fire-cracked rock, but there's very few artifacts at these ceremonial sites. They're not domestic areas. They're not
Yeah,
living
now
there.
it varies, like
Yeah.
harness might be
Yeah,
different,
harness
but
could
some
be.
of them are, some of them, I imagine they were built and then they walked away.
so when they're building, when you've got, 1,000 people, they have to have a substantial number of people, right, to put one of these up in any kind of time. Is there a vast tent city out on the fringe of it? I'm trying to imagine what,
Yeah.
like, I want to walk through these landscapes. Is there a field full of, like something like this, or this, I guess? Is there like a tent city out here, or up along the river there, or are they all, just living in 2s and 3s out in the woods? Where are the people staying for the month or?
That's a
6
$50,000
months?
question right there. We don't know. We know there's no big villages.
Yeah.
Right,
We would have found those.
yeah.
So the alternative, it must be ephemeral occupations, things that are season-long occupations. And then we do know that there were farmsteads in the floodplains
Right.
where you'll have 3 great big structures. Probably not more than 3 structures, but they're big. These things are,
Bigger than this room,
Like a
yeah.
communal house for
Yeah.
yeah.
extended
30, 40
families?
people living in there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe 30 people under one roof.
This gentleman had a question.
Places like Site Mound, do they have any estimate on how much time it would have taken to construct a mound of that size approximately?
I don't know, but just using a
I mean,
wheelbarrow and
they
shovel
have
to grade my
build
yard,
that thing.
it's,
Have
a
a
lot.
lot of people there to do that, they've got to be living somewhere.
The
And
places
they're
that we-
out, they're out here hunting for their food and all that, and there have to be village sites somewhere within the general area.
Yeah. The
Yeah, the
places
thing
that
of it is,
we,
they're using different colored dirt in some of them too.
yeah, some
So
places
they're
that
getting,
are
stuff from different
lining
places.
earth. The places that we know the most about, in terms of like how long did it take to build an earthwork, it looks like they're built quickly and in 1 or 2 pulses.
30 days, 90
Hopefully is
days.
one of the places where we know a lot about that, and
We're taking a lot of people real.
a lot of people in a single season.
so everyone shows up for this event.
Yeah. And then locally, the best estimates we have would be like 1 person per square mile at contact in the 17th, 18th century in the Ohio Valley. one person per square mile is kind of like the gold
Density.
standard estimate,
Density.
the density of people. So there's 700 square miles in Ross County, Ohio. So that gives you 700 people is one estimate. It's not enough. So people have to be coming, well, I don't know, there's a couple, I don't know what's going on there. It means our estimate is wrong and that there were higher densities 2,000 years ago than there ever were, which is possible. Or it means there's people coming from far away, Tennessee Cumberland system, Kanawha Valley, Illinois Valley, I mean, people, and that's probably true too.
1700, that would be after the plague and everything, yellow fever and everything else wiped out a lot of the Indians.
Yeah, there had already been, even in the 15, before Columbus ever got here, there was a population collapse in a lot of places.
Do you think that the east?
That's why this kind of work is really valuable, because it just highlights these questions, for one thing, and really focuses our attention on the important thing, humans in the landscape.
Do you think that the development or the rise of the Eastern Agricultural Complex really feeds into this eventually, because it's land management? They are managing the land, they're managing the plants, they are doing burning, probably slash and burns within agriculture, that type of stuff.
Do we have any, like, cross-sections of mounds showing layers of soot every couple of years? Or anything like that, where we can see that they're burning off?
No.
If they build them really quickly, then they wouldn't have to have.
Right, it'd still be earth for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Not period or whatever.
Right, we do see, like at Hopeton, at the Great Circle, at several places, at High Bank, there are two major construction events represented within those walls. But there's really there's no soil development or no significant vegetation that grows between those events. So it's a pulse that might be a season long or a couple of years of a pause between episodes. And then the final surface is the same surface as we see today. And whatever burning or evidence there might have been for maintenance was plowed away in the.
So if I was doing if I wanted to make a picture, say here at site, of it in full use, it would probably be most accurate to show it with earth walls, not covered in grass, right? Because they're building these and using them at the time of most activity, I guess, would be, maybe I'll have a couple where it's,
Well, the
a couple
grass
of
today
years
is not the
post.
grass that was there the vegetation that was there 2,000 years ago. So,
Is it different types, you mean?
yeah, they didn't have, it wasn't lawn grass, so a lot of these places, that's what you see them planted in, lawn grass. That's not the type of vegetation that was here. So it would have been very spotty, it would not have been green and,
Oh, so more sand and dirt and,
yeah, it would have been very spotty, I would think, yeah.
okay. So
And people always ask me,
strip
so,
the grass out of here? I'm trying, just in practical terms, I'm trying to think of how I can.
I don't know, it doesn't look like there's any grass on the earthworks there, but,
Right.
yeah, I don't know, I mean, you can go down to, Junction, of course, that's prairie, and we're saying it's not prairie, but, you can kind of get an idea of, what the vegetation might have been. I mean, it wasn't lawn grass, so, we know that much.
Didn't look like it does today.
No, not at all, yeah, not at all, yeah.
I read on the French explorers over by the Mississippi talking about different Indian camps, the differences in the different Indians. And one group, there would be no grass, there would not be a blade of grass in the whole camp. And,
Really?
And the French explorers are saying if a dog got sick, it would be cleaned up and taken outside of the camp. So some of them were spotless, others not so.
Okay.
One of the things that people ask me about, like what I'm doing up at Snake Inn or other place, talking about earthworks is, you know, I mean, how many people did it take to build these things, and how long did it take? And, you know, as Brett was saying, you know, probably, you know, they could do it pretty quickly if you had enough people. So one of the analogies I like to use, and I know this doesn't really equate very well, but people from Ohio will understand this. I always say, what are the Amish famous for?
Right. Barn raising.
Just barn raising, right. So they get together over a weekend, and they gather members from their community, which is a religious, you know, civil, you know, they're kind of a sect, they're, you know, of their, you know, of their peers, basically. And they get together, you know, and they build a, you know, a barn in a matter of a couple of days, you know, by hand. You know, which would take, you know, it would take many, many months if someone was out there doing it by themselves or with just their immediate
But you
family.
show up with 1,000 people and they're well
Yeah,
organized and
yeah.
they're.
So there had to be some kind of coordination and cooperation to do these things. You agree, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what all this calendrical interest
Yeah.
is,
Were they setting certain,
that's probably.
Yeah,
why
like,
they're
so are they
interested.
commemorating that event, like we're going to wherever, you know, whatever, we're going to site to commemorate this solstice, this lunar event, we're gonna mark this event, and that's when we're doing it? And the
Yeah.
culmination of this project is we're gonna be done by the 21st.
Right, and it's a way of coordinating people over vast distances where, you know, everybody knows when the solstice is coming. You know, even 300 miles away from
Right.
here, they know when the solstice is coming. So if you tell them, hey, be here on the solstice, everybody knows when to be there. And then you've got
Or
the
show up at the
18
cross border
months-
and then we'll get to the solstice, you know, we're
Yeah.
done by the solstice.
That's the grand opening.
And then you've got that 18.6-year generational cycle that you could plan for, you know, almost 20 years in advance over, you know, people in Florida might be planning to come
Up here for
for
that.
something like that.
and the other thing we always have to be concerned about is, you know, this, like Rome wasn't built in a day, and, you know, Hopeton or whatever wasn't built in a day. I mean, how, because what you see out there now, that was probably, I don't know, maybe a generation or two people could have, you know, participated in building the various elements that comprise, you know, any of these earthwork places. But in archaeology, you know, even if you have radiocarbon dates, you know, they're not, you know, they don't give you, you know, this day, this time, et cetera. You know, you're plus or minus 30 years, and, you know, so that's 3
30 years is
generations.
Plenty of time to build the whole works.
Yeah, so that's 3 generations, that's like 20 years in a generation. So, you know, it could be at the end, or the beginning, or in the middle. So it's really hard, because the contemporaneousness of, you know, what you see out there, you know, it's hard to determine, unless you have hundreds and hundreds of radiocarbon dates. And we just don't have that for these places. I mean, it's like at Snake Den, we just got 3 new radiocarbon dates on some pit features there, and they're all early to middle Adena. Yet the mounds that are built there, and the Squircle and everything else, are probably, you know, early Hopewell. So they're up there at Snake
It's a long
Den,
stretch.
using this landform for hundreds and hundreds of years as a place to do ceremonies, you know, various things.
Before there
So-
were mounds.
Yeah, before the mounds were even built there, yeah.
So
So-
then the place was important, and then they later put
The
in
place
these
was
monuments.
Yeah, yes, I would say that that's true, yeah.
Is it the geography?
It could be, I mean, because people ask, I had 40 students today and 20 adults, and they say, well, why did they build these why did they build this up here? And it's like, well, you know, that's a very good question, but, you know, they built these kinds of places on top of hilltops. So obviously, the tops of the landforms were important to them.
Right.
I don't know, it was because they could get a better perspective on, you know, solar and lunar alignments or whatever, you know, I don't know. You know, so that's an open question.
And another consideration, I'm going to tag in here to try to make sure I'm not way afield with Brett. Out at Hopeton, I got the impression from Mark Lineup that they basically excavated inside the works. So there wouldn't be any I mean, they seem to have gone down, how far?
Yeah, that's
Stripped is
something.
topsoil.
Yeah,
Stripped off
the entire.
So inside the
square.
earthworks, they stripped the topsoil
Okay.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So this, all this in here is
yeah,
bare
20
earth.
acres was the top
Yeah,
10 or 12 inches was stripped off of that.
And now I'm thinking in terms of like, how do I redraw my maps?
And they had to
So,
clear off all that
do I
vegetation
strip
if
out
there were
the
trees
grasses
there, they
from
probably
there
had to
and
get rid of
have
that.
bare earth in the
Naomi told me
And burn 'em out.
it was like that at High Banks too,
Yeah.
that she thought it just went right down to the topsoil.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to go, take
Am
all
I,
the grasses.
am I mistaken? But I've read a bunch of that stuff on Hopeton, and they scraped away all the humus, all the topsoil, and then they built these earthworks, and there were different colors of material in the embankments.
Mhm.
And some of them were even fired,
Seen some.
and they did not, well, if they were fired, they probably did not have any vegetation on them, and they were probably somewhat easier to maintain. Now, what they used, it had to have been the clay if they were firing it, rather than, and sand erodes real too easily, but yet they use different colored materials in the embankments, and oftentimes on different sides
Yeah,
of the
the
same
inside was
embankment.
yellow and the outside was a reddish brown.
Am I correct?
I think.
That's correct.
Now, is that on,
We
that's not
don't-
on
what we-
all of them, right? That's not on all sites, but some of these?
I'm just talking about Hopeton,
Okay.
just what I've read on,
That two-part construction with the red and the yellow is true at Hopeton, High Bank, and the Great Circle.
Great circle.
Those are the only ones we know anything about, and they all do show that pattern. The one thing that you said that we don't have great evidence for is that firing or burning. There's a lot of, like, if you read Squier and Davis and a lot of, Atwater, a lot of the 19th century reports, they talk about these earthworks being burned red and brick hard, and maybe they were, but we don't have any modern evidence of that. Nobody in the 20th century found evidence of that, so I don't know what they're talking about. However, I have talked to that guy we talked to, Bob Matting, what was his name? Matson, Mr. Matson.
Bobby Matson.
He plowed Hopeton, and he talked about seeing burned areas. So I think there's something going on, but it's just, we don't have good evidence of it.
And it's gonna take more generations before you would ever be able to collect all the size of these places, and to be able to,
Yeah.
to excavate and expose what all is there.
Yeah,
It's
at
just-
Hopeton, is the place we know the most about earthwork construction, because the National Park Service worked there for 12 seasons. But that amounts to, there's 10 trenches in something, 10-meter-wide trenches in something that is, 2,000 meters of wall. So
That's a good start.
it's a good start, but then
We've been
site,
digging Pompeii for what, a couple hundred years now? So
yeah.
a couple centuries even though.
So it's complex.
Yeah.
One more thing about having the multiple sites is that wouldn't that help contribute to genetic diversity too? If you were only going to this particular area and that particular area every several years, that would help keep the genetics diverse? Like the young
Hey, coming up
young
from
ones
Florida.
meeting, the men and the young men and the young women meeting as they come to age.
Yeah, we're gonna go up to Chillicothe and meet some girls and build some earthworks.
There's been a couple of studies of genetics of Hopewell, and basically they find that it's pretty diverse, right? Brett?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty diverse.
So they have tested DNA. I was thinking about that the other night. They tested DNA. Can you find out who their descendants are? Do we know?
Well,
Is that a question people don't want to ask because of
well,
modern sensitivities?
we just don't know. There's been really only one genetic study, and the samples all came from Hopewell Mound Group.
Right.
But those samples also included like Fort Ancient aged individuals.
Right.
And poorly provenienced things, so the bottom line is, we really don't know anything about that. What we do know is, yeah, it wasn't like one group of people.
Right.
It was definitely.
These are lots of people who share this, well, maybe kind of like,
And,
there aren't.
but the
like
genetics point to the west. Like, it doesn't show that there was any interaction with.
But these are more Western people coming here.
Yeah, if you want, like, modern day tribes,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, you know, Osage and, you know,
Okay.
Piankeshaw, Miami, you know, people that
They-
today are in the west, but historically they were in the west too. I mean, you know,
Yeah, but-
people will say, well, did the Delaware build the mounds? Well, no, Delaware weren't even here, you know, and
So you have to be careful about that, because we have genetic data from Hopewell Mound Group,
that's it.
and then we have
Some
a bunch
Illinois.
of samples from the Illinois River Valley.
Right.
But we got nothing from the Tennessee Cumberland,
Right,
just because those
right.
studies, those skeletons were never studied. So, yeah, all the ties point to the west, because that's where all our data comes from. Other people will point to the one study that was done that showed a close relationship with the Yakima Indians.
Yeah.
But it just happened that there was a Yakima person in the sample, and they're gonna be more closely related to Hopewell people than I would be, right? So, I would take all
Yeah,
that genetic
take it with a grain
stuff
of
and
salt.
just, don't put any stock in it, doesn't mean anything.
I was kind of marginally interested in that, just in a sense of like, well, what do these people look like? And you do get variation in appearance and stature and stuff from different groups
Yeah.
of people, so I was hoping to get, oh yeah, they look just like this guy. That would be helpful for a portrait.
But what's good is to put people on the landscape, because that's what I always tell, you know, when you come to these places, you know, you see mounds of earth and green grass.
Yeah.
But you need to picture them with people out there doing things if you really want to try and understand and appreciate these places.
Right.
And it's not, and all you see is the mounds of earth. You know, in some places, the grass that's, you know, been, you know,
then your frame of reference is
interpretively mowed, or
me
I
and
call
my
it the
family
Hopewell
having a
haircut.
picnic at the
But,
park.
you know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of wooden architecture at these places too.
Yeah,
So,
that's-
and pit features, and you got to picture people doing things there. So.
Yeah, I think your work is very valuable
Yeah.
for that, but you're showing the wooden architecture that, has not been shown before.
Yeah, I think that's.
You've got
important.
buildings and wood hinges, that's fantastic. And just having people on the landscape.
Right.
That's great.
There's a question I should ask you. Are they thatching their roofs? I mean, we're in a prairie, or are they cutting grass for that?
It's
or-
probably bark,
Yeah.
Bark, okay.
but there's people that'll fight me.
Well, I remember, I mentioned earlier, I went to the Historical Society when I was a kid. There were a couple of graves, and I think a bark, like a wigwam or something. had
Yeah.
been a long time, I don't know if it's still there.
No.
Okay.
Long gone.
But that kind of thing, like a bark structures is okay.
What about the Adena House at,
That solves your tree problem too, after a year or so.
in what's the site in West Virginia? The Adena Mound there.
At Moundsville?
Yeah, at
Yeah.
Moundsville. They've got an Adena House in there.
Yeah.
You might look at their site.
Moundsville?
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I'll do it.
Great, great.
yeah, great.
Great.
Yeah.
Old age, sorry.
Well, I've got a,
Moundsville's Alabama.
So if I build a structure, just real quick, if I build I don't know, I'm saying there's like a 17th century engravings from Virginia,
John White, yeah.
just a little dome of bark, is that a house that?
Just as long as you
that should be
don't put a
accurate?
teepee in there, you'll be all right.
As long as it's not a teepee?
Yeah.
Okay. I noticed a teepee on one of these paintings from the
We're working on that.
Well, I don't know where that person's from, it may be,
Our
it may be
job is never
appropriate for their
done.
place. Where they were.
So if you have people coming from Florida or whatever, you would also have different building ideas coming in.
Right, yeah, down there, the teepee is, it's kind of an open structure, it's palm thatch, very Caribbean. Something, just incidentally, it reminds me of something I read years ago. There was this idea, I forget where this paper came from. The idea was that the mound building tradition may have originated, I don't know if it was South America or in the Caribbean, as a way to keep crops out of the water in swampy area. and then kind of migrated up through Florida into this part, this part of the world. I don't know if there's any truth to it, and I couldn't find that paper if I looked for it a long time ago.
Well, the earliest,
People are doing this kind of stuff,
the earliest mound building sites are kind of in northeastern Louisiana at like Watson Break and Poverty Point. I mean, they go back, I think Watson Break goes back like 5,500 years, something like that. So there's a tradition of building pretty elaborate earthworks going back that far. But, why it kind of flourished in this area at this time, I mean.
I think the lifestyle is changing, with that mid-Holocene hypsothermal deal.
Good.
And dried everything out, and they had to, they couldn't count on going to their favorite patch to find their favorite plants there that they wanted to use to eat and make things out of, so they started managing that landscape.
Yes.
And then they invented pottery, so you can't haul everything in your pots without breaking it, so you're becoming more and more settled. And then you start to notice your environment even more, and you spend some time seeing where the sun's setting and rising, and it all fits together, it really does.
But it's complex.
You got a major highway connecting it all. You
Yeah.
got the Mississippi, the Ohio, the side of it.
So your comment about different building styles, so then would it be, if I put different kinds of buildings in here, would that be reasonable? Is it be jarring, or are they gonna standardize? I mean, the construction of the mounds is all pretty uniform. It looks like it's all designed by the same.
Building construction is uniform too. There's a unique Hopewell architecture
The way the
for
parts
their
are distributed
structures
and
too.
this-
Yeah.
Domestic structures, yeah.
Beg your pardon?
For domestic structures.
And inside Mound City as well, which is not
Yeah,
domestic.
under the mounds, yeah.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
all right. So, and we have those plots of, how they're laid out.
So never mind what I said.
Well, I wonder, okay, I suppose maybe that's on the fringes of the, out in the tent city, or any idea about where they might have lived, or how they would, are they all, they're not all sleeping under the stars for 3 months. I mean, you could do that for a couple of weeks maybe, but are they putting up we don't have any evidence for it, but what's the sense of, where are they staying when they're here? You got to say 1,000 people or 10,000, I don't know, 1,000 maybe, but if you have 1,000 people coming in for the weekend, where are they going to,
They're not
where are they going?
inside the earthworks.
They're not what?
They're not inside the earthworks, I think we can say that with
Okay.
some confidence. Beyond that, it's hard to say much.
What about burial? If they have all these people, there's going to be people that are passing away,
Oh, yeah.
and so you have to.
Well, most people were not buried in mounds. Most people may not have been
People in the
buried
mounds
at all.
are they like chieftains or priests?
They have a status.
They have some kind of status, and, okay, so.
Most people could have just been put up on scaffolds and let nature take its place. But you have cremations, also in Hopewell, so.
Were ordinary people cremated and treated in the same way, just not in the same scale as a mound?
We don't know if they're ordinary or not.
Oh,
We don't know.
okay.
Well, you do find burials at like domestic habitation sites for Hopewell.
Oh, so a couple houses, and then there will be.
And they'll be buried out in the yard or somewhere like that. Not a lot, not a lot.
In a refuse pit.
Yeah. But it doesn't count for everybody who is living. I mean,
We just don't have a lot of that.
we don't have big
data.
Hopewell cemeteries either. I mean, it's a mound, basically the cemetery.
And this was a cemetery, right?
Well, yeah, a series of mounds.
Yeah. Is this like, while it's in use, is it half structures and half mounds, or is it a couple of structures at a time?
You would have seen a series of that going on, and it was
There's a
400
constant
years of
cycle.
use, yeah. Would have been times when there was nothing happening, possibly, but there would have been layers of that work happening.
Do you have any idea if they had like I was thinking of the idea of having, is there any kind of like a ceremonial guard? 8 or 10 guys who are here just keeping the sacred precinct
Possibly.
sacred?
Have you looked at some of the scans that Dr. Ruby had done with the Germans?
I don't think so.
Yeah, we do have, like, at site in particular, we've got a huge 300-acre magnetometer survey. And
Really?
one of the things that it shows us there is, there are definitely pit clusters of cooking, maybe storage facilities, but certainly cooking pits. And they're definitely clustered in several locations. And I think you could use that. Well, we don't have a great idea of how old those pits are. They could be, they're not necessarily Hopewell in age. They could be older or more recent. That's what Tim Everhart is right now trying to disentangle, trying to figure out which of those are Hopewell related. But that's the best, and I can get you access to that.
Thank you.
And it's a good way to, you could use that as a proxy for how people are distributed over the landscape.
Right, okay.
You can
And,
also get a count and a pattern for all the posts.
Right.
All the posts aren't there.
I think that would be
but-
helpful. I'd like, if I can get that and then just I'll place the posts and see what we have.
But you can get a pattern.
Yeah.
It's like at Snake Den, we've had, we contract with Virtual Grounds to build some virtual reality models of what Snake Den looked like. But they've taken like all the pits, the lines of the pits, they've taken the wood hinges and the mounds and the squircle and the rectangle and everything, and they put it together on one model, But we know that the pit features are 800 years before the mounds were ever built. So,
So it looks very
you can
different.
put all that together, but you have to, take it with a grain of salt and say, look, we know all these were contemporary.
Yeah.
So, and, there's no way that the Hopewell, when they're building the mounds, they knew there was these lines of pit features that were, going places. However, some of the lines of pit features point right to the rectangle in the neighbor's field. So, I mean, maybe, it's hard to explain. It's hard to explain.
My idea for the paintings is I'm gonna kind of virtually get my paintbrushes in my back pocket and some paints in my backpack and canvases under my arm, travel back in time to one day, and it can be a number of days. Like, it doesn't have to be all, June 1st, 250 or something like that, but
Yeah.
some date, I'd like a fixed time, just one moment at each of the sites.
Yeah.
And some of them are more photogenic than others. There's, a lot of them, I'm down on the ground and just these monumental walls, which is cool, but unless you know what you're looking at, it's just, kind of it's a dramatic picture, but it doesn't really, I'm really hoping to try to show a lot of the geometry.
To me, something that would be useful for people I know that come to see this, the monuments here, would be a snapshot of the construction.
In construction, with guys with baskets and somebody
Guys
making
making
baskets over
baskets.
here and collecting the rushes.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you see today
Workshops.
is what's finished.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're not able to really get a good.
Yeah, what's that work party look like?
Yeah.
That, I think, would be interesting to see.
Yeah, instead of Tecumseh, what we need is like a Hopewell
Right.
reenactment here.
Yeah. Well, maybe you have more mounds that need to be reconstructed, so we
And if you think
have a
about,
special work party this summer.
Yeah,
and if you think about all the cloth remnants that have been found on the site and
Copper,
other
yeah.
places, how, it may have taken as much time to make the cloth for site as it did to build the entire earthwork
and
there.
as much dedication and
Collecting all
work
that
and-
milkweed and everything
Yeah.
else.
The dyes
The amount
they
of time it
use, I
takes to
mean,
make-
it's
Yeah.
probably pretty colorful, like we're understanding at a lot of indigenous places,
Yeah.
colors were very important.
Yeah.
And so, it wasn't just, I mean, maybe the mounds were, like I say, on the outside, it's a different color than on the inside. Maybe they even had different colors for, we just don't, I don't know, So,
Uh,
do we stop your Did you have other slides to show?
I've gone through them all, and
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I'm just kind of running around at something that approximates what we're talking about.
The scans that set showed a whole bunch of squircles and post circles, smaller ones scattered. Some of them look really haphazard. Were those in existence when Earthworks was there, or are they pre-Earthwork? Or does anybody know?
We don't really know. The earthwork walls don't intersect them, so they're probably not pre, or they're, I don't know. They're not superimposed, so they're probably contemporary or post-dating the walls. But we just don't know. That's what makes it fun and interesting.
Another thing that just occurred to me, these, the borrow pits, that are filled with water here, are they using those as reflecting, like, to catch reflections of things? Or is it just, do we know if they were filled with water at the time, or are they just drinking water, wash water, something like that, or are they?
We know at Mound City, they were intentionally lined with clay, so
Yeah.
probably holding water. At the Great Circle at Newark, they're lined with clay and holding water. Some of the ones at Junction are not lined, so they're probably not holding water. It's variable, it's sort of site by site.
But they're all on those terraces with sand and gravel, so they have to be lined.
They have to be lined in order to hold water.
Yeah, good point.
I was checking some certain alignments and trying to get, I think I actually got a really cool one at site, but I didn't bring it. Just getting a reflection of, I think that it was the moon in that pool from the mount. Like, it wasn't that interesting, like I didn't see an alignment over another earthwork, but I saw the reflection in that pool when it was coming up, and I didn't know if that was deliberate or just coincidental.
You have to be awful close to it to see the reflection.
Yeah.
I've been a photographer forever, and you'd have to be like right, and then you'd be seeing it, not where it came up. You couldn't see it come up. I don't think.
Thank you.
No, thank you.